Hello BookTube, it's Louise from the Big Head Bookworm. Lovely to see you. Are you having a nice day? I haven't got any cake, but I do have a cup of tea in my Wonder Woman mug. So have you got any tea or coffee that you could just perhaps pause me for a moment, get yourself a nice hot beverage of your choice, and we could have a little chat about the books that I have been reading in May. I wasn't planning on reading this many books, I will be honest, but then myself and Benedict had the dubious pleasure of experiencing the latest chesty cough and cold virus, which, the downside, felt very unwell, couldn't really do an awful lot. Upside, had a lot more time for reading. Not big, impressive books, I will admit. They were stuff that just got me through the nights at 3 o'clock in the morning when I didn't have anything else to do, certainly couldn't sleep because of all the coughing, and so I sat and I read. So I have gone through quite a few books, which I'm going to show you. First one I read was Riven by Sarah Bryant. This is the sequel to Bound, which I read last month. Paranormal romance set in modern day Scotland, in the Highlands of Scotland, based around the fallen angels, the Watchers mythology. Bound was quite good, I quite enjoyed it. Saw this was in the library, so I picked it up, and it was awful. I mean, awful. I really can't explain to you how bad I found this. The plot, the first book, it was tightly contained, set on the island. This one's now set in Edinburgh, and it's almost as though it released her. It released Sarah and the plot, which I can't go into because unless you've read Bound, it would be lots of spoilers. Don't read Riven, even if you have read Bound. Don't read Riven because it is just silly. She abandons the mythology of the Watchers that she's built up and then just goes crazy with all the different mythologies that she brings in. So she starts talking about Fae, and she starts talking about goddess religion, and she starts talking about, she just throws so many different ideas at the book to see what stick. The characterisation of the new characters are appalling, so thinly drawn. I just couldn't bear it. I did read it, and I wasn't actually feeling ill when I was reading this, and I'm not sure if this isn't the book that actually caused me to feel weak and catch the virus. I don't know. It was appalling, let me tell you. I'm not reading any more Sarah Bryant. We're done. Me and Sarah. Finished. Finito. Then I read, so I've got a couple of fantasy books that I read here. The other one, this is another one I picked up from the library. It's A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This is the first in a trilogy. The second one has only just come out. So this came out last year. The second one's just come out. This is epic fantasy based on Beauty and the Beast. Especially, I'd say the first 3/4 of the book really tightly follow Beauty and the Beast, and Fae mythology again. I didn't realise, but I was obviously going through a bit of a Fae thing at this time. I really enjoyed it. The first 3/4, as I say, is Beauty and the Beast. It's really good. It has lots of different Fae characters. I loved the heroine. She made some daft decisions, but that was in the world, it worked, and it's based on a fairy tale. The hero, yeah, he was fine. He was fine. Then the last 20%, it absolutely kicks off, and there are some side characters in this book which are brilliant, which just all the tingles, all the feels for the next book. Just loved it. As I finished it going, I need the second book, which actually came out 2 days later, so it was really good. So this is A Court of Thorn and Roses. If you like paranormal, romance, high fantasy, again, fairy tale retelling, go for it. Absolutely loved it. Then I picked up, this is my other fantasy book which I read this month so far, is Shadow Study, Maria V. Schneider. This is the 7th in the Chronicles of Ixia series. The first 3 feature the lady that is in this is Yelena Zalta, and it's the Study series, so it's an arc of 3 books. And then it went into the Glass series, arc of 3 books, and then reading at the back of this, it would suggest that she has had so many fans and so much probably pressure from the publishers and her agent to go back to the first series and develop it more, to continue, and she does a lot of backstory. It's thin. I found it very predictable and thin, and I was uninterested. And I think that perhaps we've enjoyed our time together, me and Maria and Yelena, but I think this is going to probably be it for me, and I'm not going to bother carrying on with this series. It was fine. I read it, but I didn't love it, to be honest. So, yeah. Mysteries that I have read this month. My audiobook's been a mystery, and that was The Three-Act Tragedy by Agatha Christie, which it's a Hercule Poirot. I could have recited it, but I still thoroughly enjoyed it. What I did find interesting was when I got this copy off the shelf is at some point I cut a hole in the cover. Why would I do that? I mean, I've had this since the 80s. I think I even got it new in the 80s. I mean, but why? Anyway, I really enjoyed that. Then I read Patricia Wentworth's Miss Silver Comes to Stay. Oh, look at that cover. You cad. You bounder. It's brilliant. 1920s, 1930s mystery. If you like Agatha Christie, if you like Nego Marsh, if you like Dorothy L. Sayers, nowhere near as political or feminist as... Actually, I do think there's quite a strong feminist side of this. She's a bit more of a feminist writer as Patricia than Agatha Christie, but I really enjoyed these. And Miss Silver, Maud Silver, is a brilliant character. If you like that small village murder where there's a small kind of group of suspects that it could be, you'll love Patricia Wentworth if you like Agatha Christie. They're so worth it. They are so worth going, and they're beautiful period pieces. But they don't feel. I mean, they're dated, but they're still utterly enjoyable to read, so I completely recommend that. And I had no idea who did it, which is rare for me. Then I read the Lucy Ribchester's The Amber Shadows. It's a Bletchley Park spy, code-breaking, cipher deciphering, all of that kind of mystery. It's not a murder mystery, it's a mystery. I love the period setting, set in the Second World War in Bletchley Park, where they did all the code breaking. It was fabulous. Really got a sense, a realistic sense of the era and the place. It was incredibly evocative. All the stuff about make, do, amend, or the obsession of trying to create past luxury when you have none. Billeting in somebody else's house, what that's like. All the groups, different people being brought together who have nothing in common apart from the fact they're very good at code breaking. The idea of secrets and secrecy and that kind of threat was really well played. So for that, the book was brilliant. The plot itself was thin and predictable. I got to 220 pages. It's 440 pages long, and I thought, oh, please let that not be the end. I could see it coming, and it was. I do believe she spent so much time building the feeling of the book and really going into the detail of what it was like and the evocative nature of it. And also with code books, code breaking books, there is a tendency that you have to explain, well, this is what a code is, and this are the ways that you can break it, and this is how complicated it is, and what is a cipher, and how does this machine work? That the plot can get lost in all of those explanations, and that's what happened in this book. There wasn't enough room for the plot, unfortunately, but it was fine. It was fine. Nothing more than that. My non-fiction book so far this month, I've not read much non-fiction this month, I think that's been poorly, was Dance of Stones, A Shamanic Road Trip by Ken Day, which I read on my Kindle. This is published by Moon Books, which is a pagan orientated publisher. I've got quite a lot of their ebooks, and I also have building up a nice little collection of their physical copies as well. And I really enjoyed it. It's kind of allegorical fiction, I would say, rather than non-fiction. Maybe it is non-fiction. Ken Day is a post-tribal shaman. That's what he says that he is, and he's a practicing shaman. But he doesn't come from the traditional shamanic community, so he doesn't have he's not Native American that you would imagine, or Latin American like Peruvian or Siberian. He doesn't come from that kind of background. He's Irish American, it sounds like. And but it is, is called to become a shaman. And it's the idea of how would you find your community? How would you find your tribe? How would you work in such a way when you don't have that natural lineage? You don't have that community saying this is how a shaman operates and this is what they do. How do you find your own community and your own tribe? It's also set in northern France and then in Cornwall, in the standing stones of those areas, which is brilliant because I love Cornwall and the standing stones there. So that was very familiar and that was really lovely. And he kind of came in as a tourist, and so it was quite lovely to see from that kind of way. Yeah, really enjoyed it, really rated it, really, I mean, it's fly through book, but it got me thinking, and I actually took down quite a lot of notes because there was a lot of energy stuff in there, which I really enjoyed. So, quickly go on, quick slurp of tea, excuse me. A little Wonder Woman boost for me there. This is the last book that I have read so far, which is Curtis Sittenfeld's Eligible. Modern retelling of Pride and Prejudice, part of the Jane Austen project. So we've had Emma and Sense and Sensibility, Northanger Abbey, and this is the Pride and Prejudice. I haven't read the other three because I've not really been interested, but I adore Pride and Prejudice. Absolute. One of my favourite of favouriteest books in my favourite list. It would be favouriteest. And I couldn't not read this because every time I came into the room I'm like, but I didn't want to read it when I was not well in case I had that kind of wave of it. But as soon as I got better I was like, right, I must read it. And I did fly through it. I was ultimately disappointed, and it made me wonder whether any Pride and Prejudice retelling, when it is so blatant a retelling, is always going to be disappointing because it's not going to be Pride and Prejudice. It was grubby and trashy and tacky, and those are all the things that Pride and Prejudice is not. It has all the characters. It has the Bennets, and it has the Lucases, and it has Cathy de Bourgh instead of Lady Catherine, and it has a Wickham character, and it has the kind of the friends and the cousin Willie, but Lizzie was just the first. All the interactions with Fitzwilliam Darcy at the beginning were just horrible. She was horrid. I mean, really unpleasant, rude. And there is a development of a character, and there is a character arc, and I did like her more. And I did see all the kind of how it developed. But she was just horrid and trashy to begin with. And I know they're going to put sex in it, and I have no problem with that. But I have a problem with it, with how she spoke, because Lizzie is so feisty and witty, and she has such depth. And I didn't feel that the Lizzie in this had depth. I think that's my problem. I wouldn't have. Am I being cruel about that? I think to begin with, I was so disappointed. I was so disappointed with how it was to begin with that I struggled. And it did make up to it at the end, and it features reality TV, and I don't know, it just felt tacky. A lot of it felt tacky, and that's the one thing I have never considered that Pride and Prejudice would ever be, is tacky. So that was such a shame. I mean, I read it and I got some feelings towards the end about them being together and what have you, but I was disappointed. I've got this big hardback. I don't know. Yeah, so there was a bit of a shame, but it was a mixed bag this month. A mixed bag. And how many have I read? I was really planning on having a slow month because, I've been racing through books recently and going just too fast. I was going too fast and I was going to slow down, and then I haven't. I have just gone, I've gone faster. But then that was because I was I was reading light books. So yeah, we'll see what happens for the rest of the month. Anyway, I better go. Quite a long video. It's been lovely to see you. Come back again. Let's do it again.